Welcome to Dead Talk Live. I'm your host, Viz. Today we are joined by director Brandon Slagle, whose new movie, The Flood, is coming to theaters and on demand July 14th. Brandon, thank you for joining us today. How's it going?
Thank you for having me. It's going good. I'm I'm glad to be here because at one point I thought I was going to be in Asia doing another movie, and I'm kind of on hold waiting. So
It
I
worked
get to
out?
talk to more fine people. Yes.
It worked out. So let's get right to it. The Flood, I found it really entertaining, a fun movie. It brings together a 50-year storm, a prisoner transfer, jailbreak, and, of course, man-eating alligators. So I have to ask you, when the concept was first presented to you, what were some of the thoughts that ran through your mind?
So originally a different director was doing it, and I had done this company's previous movie called Battle for Saipan, which is a like, martial arts World War II movie. And the director had a conflict. So the producer Damon called me and said, "Hey, do you want to go back to Thailand and film? We have a movie that your friend Chad Law wrote." And Chad is a prolific action movie writer. He's been
Mm-hmm.
around 12, 15 years. And he co-wrote this with his a writing partner named Josh Ridgway. And Chad and I had been trying to do something together for years, and it just never really quite came to fruition. Although a couple things did come close. So I really said yes at that. I'll do it. Just because I love shooting in Thailand, and Chad and I could finally do something together. And then he went on to say, okay, there's going to be CGI gators and constant and flooded sets and constant rain. Um,
I mean, speaking of
so
that, how was it working? Because the water was real, at least the
yes,
water you guys were stepping in and stuff.
yeah.
How uncomfortable was that for you and the cast having to work in water pretty much the entire time?
It was so when people see this movie, they'll notice that there's some sort of water element from like frame one. It was definitely a challenge which none of us could have predicted. We had, the giant rain machines you see in big movies. We had leaks from the ceilings. We had water bars in the windows, or we had, some type of water element was literally in just about every scene
Yeah.
of the movie, and even scenes where it's not like visibly raining, the floor was wet, and so on and so forth. So I'm used to shooting really quickly, and so there was a big learning curve with the setup time between every shot. For instance, you either have to drain things to maintain continuity, or um, there was most people in Thailand speak pretty good English, but
Hmm.
sometimes there'd be a slight language barrier, and we'd get more rain when we need less rain, and vice versa. Um, and also, let me tell you, so shooting in that jail set, that which was a set that we built, it wasn't something that existed.
Uh huh.
Was ridiculous because it fills up to almost everyone's chest, and there was no way out because you can't just have a door you walk out of
Exactly.
because the water goes away. So the only way in and out was a ladder that went over the set.
Oh my God.
And when you have 100 crew members and 20 cast coming in and out all the time, you kind of get impatient. So I just stayed there wearing quote unquote water shoes. And
I can imagine
I
you at the end of the day looking like a giant raisin.
Oh yeah, it was actually worse than that. I looked like I had craters and like huge holes in my feet. Like someone took one of those big sewing needles that you use for yarn and just stabbed me a bunch of
Uh,
times.
now,
And my skin was peeling. I think that was because the type of chlorine that they use there is stronger, and we're not used to it here.
yeah.
Um, but like every single day was a learning experience with the water. It was really a if we had real alligators there, I wouldn't be as scared of them as I was the water,
Oh my
because the
God.
water was that
I
crazy.
can imagine. Now, you mentioned the CGI, which this movie has some pretty cool CGI effects in it. Uh, how did you keep your actors focused when they're interacting, like with the CGI alligators, for example, when they have nothing physically there? Do you have a technique when you're working with a lot of CGI to keep your actors focused?
So a number of the actors, Casper of course being one of them, had worked with invisible characters before, obviously his
Hmm.
being Starship Troopers. Um, so it really came down to a certain trust level between myself, the actors, the director of photography, Nico, and the rest of the crew. So we had to, you know, that they trusted that I was, making sure they were all looking at the same object, or they were reacting to the same space, had the same spatial awareness, and that it was being photographed properly. But we actually, it was actually fairly easy, but I think it's because so much of the movie was done in tight corridors.
Hmm.
It's not like, like one of the Transformers movies, you would have like a robot in the middle of the desert. So you have to make sure everyone's looking at this tennis ball that's,
Exactly.
on a stick in the middle of the desert. But because everything, are in this sort of like narrow hallways or rooms, it wasn't too hard to understand the spatial awareness that we needed for the Gators.
Now, you mentioned the veteran actors, Casper Van Dien, who was a previous guest of ours, of course, Nikki Whelan. They play the two main leads. Like I said, two veteran actors. When they were cast, did you basically have some initial conversations and then just got out of the way and let them do their thing?
So they were both actually already on the movie when I came
Sorry, I don't
on.
have an answer for that.
Sorry about that. Alexa decided to
Wow.
chime in.
Well, good. I'm glad Alexa doesn't know my inner thoughts.
Good.
Um, so Casper and Nikki were both already on the movie when I came on. Nikki had done another movie with uh, the production company that had sharks, so she, kind of knew the gist of it. And then Casper and I already knew each other because he was in the other movie I did with this company, Battle for Saipan, and we became good friends.
Nice.
So Casper knew already how I worked, and then Nikki fell into it really easily. I think some of that could be that I tend to get along with Australian actors very well. I don't know. Um, Obviously, I had Louis Mandelo there, who I can't seem to get rid of because we have like 7 dozen films right now. But mentioning him, he's kind of my anchor in some of these. Where if I don't know a lot of the cast already, it's very easy to kind of drop him in the middle of it, and the two of us
Nice.
build a rapport with everybody.
It's great that you have a close relationship with him. Now, in glimpses through the film, we see a softer side to the prisoners. Their human side, let's say. Why is that important for the audience to see? Do you want them to develop some kind of sympathy for the prisoners and relate to the situation that they're in currently and they all have to work together?
Yeah. So it's not so much sympathy for the prisoners because obviously some of these guys did some pretty bad stuff.
Hmm.
It's more to make them into real people because and you've probably heard that saying that you've probably walked past a serial killer 6 times in your life
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
When you've walked past them, did they kill you? Or was it like, did you have a friendly conversation with them or no interaction at all? People are people,
yeah.
and they're not evil 100% of the time. I mean, I guess maybe some people are, but people don't generate. People have those moments where they're not, a summation of what their image or what people think they are happens. And a criminal will have a moment where he pets a kitten.
Exactly.
It actually goes back to Frankenstein, where he's this monster who ultimately he drowns the little girl, but he develops like this friendship with her,
Hmm.
or something at first. And so these movies aren't necessarily sold on giving nuance to the characters. They're sold on the cast and the concept and such. But to me, that's the stuff, like, for me and to the actors, that we enjoy. And actually, some of them, like Bear Williams, for instance, who plays Angelo, the tall one, who's in there for Murder One, actually thanked me at the end for allowing them to have nuance. And it's not like big stuff that overtakes the movie. It's just like subtle motions or looks with their eyes or
Yeah,
things like that. Just make them people, because like I said, a murderer, someone killed someone one time, they're not just going to stand there seething like,
exactly.
yeah, when's my next kill?
Look at people
Typically,
like Ted Bundy. He was like the most charming, normal guy you could ever see.
exactly. I actually that's spoilers for a different project I almost let out. um but yeah, him, Charles Manson, who I
Yeah.
actually did a movie on about 10 years ago called House of Manson. There, I actually, to go back to that, I actually originally had no interest in doing it until I saw film footage of Manson being, like, vulnerable.
Mm.
Um, it was actually him being led to the courtroom, and reporters jumped on him kind of paparazzi style, and rather than the big kind of raving personality that he would put on for interviews from prison, he was just this like kind of vulnerable, shy guy. I'm like, there's a story there.
There,
So
yeah.
you gotta. Some people don't appreciate it, and they think you're glorifying bad people. But to me, you're indebted to tell that side of someone's story when you're making a movie about unsavory people.
And the reason I bring it up is towards the beginning of the film, when we're getting introduced to the prisoners, you put on the screen what they're in jail for. Cop killer, murder one, drugs, whatever. And the reason I ask is, was that important for us to know their crimes and why they're in prison? I mean, was that in the script, or was that something that you wanted to add to the film?
So that's actually something I did not add. Producers added it.
Okay,
I think it's because I understand the reasoning. It's because these people are sort of laid out with no context for about 20 minutes of the movie.
okay,
Um, in my opinion, though, and I mean no ill will, because movie making is a collaborative process.
yeah.
I felt that the way that I felt their posturing and body language kind of conveyed that these are guys you don't want to mess with.
Exactly. I mean, these guys were huge. Now, going to Russell, Casper's character, he is
Yeah,
a convicted cop killer, okay?
yeah.
And throughout the whole movie, he is accused as a cop killer by everyone, right to his face. He never denies it, okay? He never tries to proclaim his innocence or anything like that. For you, what message does that convey for Russell as a character? What does that say about him for you?
I think he's someone who, and once people see the movie, they'll see more about what you're talking about, and another layer to it. But I think it just shows that he's someone who has accepted the life that he's led.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of the characters that rides more of a gray area too, perhaps more so than the rest of them. But he's someone who isn't. He's accepted his fate, and he's going to do his time because he's accepted that he probably messed up.
Now, when you were filming him and his scenes with Nikki, did you sort of were you in conflict with yourself as how you wanted him to be portrayed as really sort of a guy knows he's done wrong and is trying to do right? Did you want to depict him just being a kind of bad at first and then softening up? His
Mhm.
character was pretty smooth and even throughout the whole film, which I
Yeah.
think was the right way to go. Did you have any conflicts on how you wanted to portray Russell?
Not really. And it's deliberate that he's relatively quiet through a lot of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
which anyone who knows Casper, or spoken to him, or sees him in other things knows that he talks a mile a minute. Um, so it showed a different side to him than you normally see, and I actually think he's very underrated and been able to do a lot of really good like character work the past few years that
Yeah.
maybe people didn't think he had in him, because he's like pretty guy, kind of looks like a Ken doll, but has this like really cool character actor side of him that I think is really just getting a workout in the last few years.
I just spoke to him just a few weeks ago. He's one of the nicest guys. Now we got to
Yeah.
talk about Nikki Whelan as Sheriff Joe. She's a real badass, and we're not going to give any spoilers, but that's demonstrated in the movie. Um, do you feel she's just a woman sheriff who is always, constantly trying to prove to the world that she has the title of sheriff because she earned it and she
Yes.
belongs there?
Yes. Um, it's very much intentional that her that her character does deserve to be there,
Mm-hmm.
but as is in the world, sometimes people um, either underestimate her because of her gender, or because her the character's father was the sheriff
Yeah.
prior. So really, it's obviously she's her father's daughter and earned her position, but people are just skeptical by nature. This could be a whole other show.
I got you.
um
I got you.
but yeah, very, very, it's very, precise and intentional that she is presented the way that she is. And actually, the first time you see her doing paperwork in her office, the camera language, like at the end of the scene, she gets up and leaves, and the camera keeps going in on the chair. And that's really my way to show that, this is a position earned.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the scenes that involved Nikki that really stuck out to me was between her and Kim DeLonghi, Eva, who plays the character Eva. When Eva is has the sheriff and they're going down the steps, and Eva tells the sheriff, I could have been a cop. Okay, I saw that scene. I saw that dialogue between the two of them as the character of Eva sort of saying, she's sort of looking at the sheriff with envy. If I had a
Yeah.
a happy family, I could have been a cop as well. And it says a
Yeah.
lot about those two women. What are your thoughts of that dialogue between those two?
So we actually shot that scene. I'll say most of the shooting schedule were overnights. We'd shoot like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And we shot that at the sun was rising at the end of the day. And at the time, all of us were looking at each other like, is this working? Does it seem necessary? And then, of course, later on, when you actually see the footage, I don't know if it was because everyone was tired or we were just kind of out of our heads and,
It
well, I
worked.
guess tired. It something about it really clicked. I
Yeah,
think a lot of it is the way is not so much the dialogue, but their eyes locking and kind of the way they're standoffish, but they're not at the same time. There's almost like a comfort level there, even though there's obviously envy and other things at play.
and as the audience, for me, I was watching those two, and I'm like, they could mirror each other. One could easily
Yeah,
be in the other one's shoes if the situation was different for them in their earlier life. Now, the
yeah,
character of Rafe, uh, he is a fascinating character who sort of his motivations are kept ambiguous, slightly. We really don't know what his end goal is, especially in regard to Russell.
yeah.
Was that done intentionally to keep sort of the audience guessing in regards to what is this guy after? What's his end game there?
It is intentional actually, and there's some stuff that we actually improvised towards the end of the movie in their final face off
Yeah,
that felt sort of tied in their story nicely. And I won't give it away, of course, but hopefully it shows what more of what Rafe's true intention was the entire time. Like these people that he's working with, does he really need them?
mm-hmm,
Are they interchangeable? Are there certain skills that he needs at the time? And then he's just going to go on his way. What's he going to do next?
exactly.
Um, and Lewis is good at portraying these very like subtle, kind of read between the lines type things, where he doesn't need to have a soliloquy or a monologue about his motivations. You can tell it what it is by just looking at him.
Well, he's got that Mandalore blood in him, so acting
Yes,
comes,
that's
acting
infamous
comes.
Mandalore blood.
I want to thank you again, Brandon. This has been a great conversation. The last 20 minutes have flown by. Again, guys, the movie is called The Flood. It is premiering in theaters and on demand a week from today, July
Today, yeah.
14th. Yeah, so make sure to check it out. This is a fun film. It's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. There's a lot of fun action. It's got a little bit of everything, so definitely check it out. I want to thank our audience, those of you who tuned in live and those who will be watching this later on. On behalf of Brandon and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Bye, everybody.